Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're continuing our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we're on chapter 9 of the 3rd canto. Lord Brahma said, "O my Lord, today, after many, many years of penance, I've come to know about you. Oh, how unfortunate the embodied living entities are that they are unable to know your personality. My Lord, you are the only knowable object, because there is nothing supreme beyond you. If there is anything supposedly superior to you, it is not the Absolute. You exist as the Supreme by exhibiting the creative energy of matter." Purport: the highest peak of the ignorance of the living entities who are conditioned by material bodies is that they are unaware of the supreme cause of the cosmic manifestation. Different people have different theories regarding the supreme cause, but none of them are genuine. The only supreme cause is Vishnu, and the intervening impediment is the illusory energy of the Lord. The Lord has employed his wonderful material energy in manifesting many, many wonderful distractions in the material world, and the conditioned souls, illusioned by the same energy, are thus unable to know the supreme cause. The most stalwart scientists and philosophers, therefore, cannot be accepted as wonderful. They only appear wonderful because they are instruments in the hands of the illusory energy of the Lord. Under illusion, the general mass of people deny the existence of the Supreme Lord and accept the foolish products of illusory energy as supreme. One can know the supreme cause, the personality of Godhead, by the causeless mercy of the Lord, which is bestowed upon the Lord's pure devotees like Brahmā and those in his disciplic succession. By acts of penance only was Lord Brahmā able to see the Garbhodakṣaya Vishnu, and by realization only could he understand the Lord as he is. Brahmā was extremely satisfied upon observing the magnificent beauty and opulence of the Lord, and he admitted that nothing can be comparable to him. Only by penance can one appreciate the beauty and opulence of the Lord. And when one is acquainted with that beauty and opulence, he is no longer attracted by any other. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2:59. Param drishtva nivartate. Param drishtva nivartate. Foolish human beings who do not endeavor to investigate the supreme beauty and opulence of the Lord are here condemned by Brahmā. It is imperative that every human being try for such knowledge, and if anyone does not do so, his life is spoiled. Anything that is beautiful and opulent in the material sense is enjoyed by those living entities who are like crows. Crows always engage in picking at rejected garbage, whereas the white ducks do not mix with the crows. Rather, they take pleasure in transparent lakes with lotus flowers surrounded by beautiful orchards. Both crows and ducks are undoubtedly birds by birth, but they are not of the same feather. 2. The form which I see is eternally freed from material contamination and has advented to show mercy to the devotees as a manifestation of internal potency. This incarnation is the origin of many other incarnations, and I am born from the lotus flower grown from your navel home. Purport: the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar, Shiva, the executive heads of the three modes of material nature, passion, goodness, and ignorance, are all generated from Garbhodakṣaya Vishnu, who is described herein by Brahmā. From the Kshirodakṣaya Vishnu, many Vishnu incarnations expand at different ages in the duration of the cosmic manifestation. They are expanded only for the transcendental happiness of the pure devotees. The incarnations of Vishnu who appear at different ages and times are never to be compared to the conditioned souls. The Vishnu Tattvas are not to be compared to deities like Brahma and Shiva, nor are they on the same level. Anyone who compares them is called a Pashandi, or infidel. Tamasaha, mentioned herein, is the material nature and the spiritual nature has a completely separate existence from tamaha. Therefore, spiritual nature is called avabhota rasa, or avarodha rasa. Avarodha means that which completely nullifies. In the transcendence, there is no chance of material contact by any means. Brahmā is the first living being, and therefore he mentions his birth from the lotus flower generated from the abdomen of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. 3. O my Lord, I do not see a form superior to your present form of eternal bliss and knowledge. In your impersonal Brahman effulgence in the spiritual sky, there is no occasional change and no deterioration of internal potency. I surrender unto you because whereas I am proud of my material body and senses, your Lordship is the cause of the cosmic manifestation, and yet you're untouched by matter. Purport, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 1855, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tattvataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can only be partially known, and only by the process of devotional service to the Lord. Lord Brahmā became aware that the Supreme Lord Krishna has many, many eternal, blissful forms of knowledge. He has described such expansions of the Supreme Lord Govinda in his Brahma Samhita 5.33 as follows. Advaitam achyutam anadim anantarupam adyam purana puruṣam navayauvanam cha vedeshu durlabam adurlabam atmabhaktau govindamadi puruṣam tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is non-dual and infallible. He is the original cause of all causes, even though he expands in many, many forms. Although he is the oldest personality, he is ever youthful, unaffected by old age. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be known by the academic wisdom of the Vedas. One has to approach the devotee of the Lord to understand him. The only way to understand the Lord as he is by devotional service to the Lord, or by approaching the devotee of the Lord who always has the Lord in his heart. By devotional perfection, one can understand that the impersonal brahmajyoti is only a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Kṛṣṇa, and that the three puruṣa expansions in the material creation are his plenary portions. In the spiritual sky of the brahmajyoti, there is no change of various kalpas or millenniums, and there are no creative activities in the Vaikuṇṭha worlds. The influence of time is conspicuous by its absence. The rays of the transcendental body of the Lord, the unlimited brahmajyoti, are undeterred by the influence of material nature. In the material world also, the initial creator is the Lord himself. He brings about the creation of Brahmā, who becomes the subsequent creator, empowered by the Lord. 4. This present form, or any transcendental form expanded by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Kṛṣṇa, is equally auspicious for all the universes. Since you have manifested this eternal personal form upon whom your devotees meditate, I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Those who are destined to be dispatched to the path of hell neglect your personal form because of speculating on material topics. Ready for the purport?
Yes.
Regarding the personal and impersonal features of the Lord, regarding the personal and impersonal features of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personal forms exhibited by the Lord in his different plenary expansions are all for the benediction of all the universes. The personal form of the Lord is also worshipped in meditation as Supersoul, Paramatma, but the impersonal Brahmajyoti is not worshipped. Persons who are addicted to the impersonal feature of the Lord, whether in meditation or otherwise, are all pilgrims to hell. Because, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 12.5, impersonalists simply waste their time in mundane mental speculation because they are addicted more to false arguments than to reality. Therefore, the association of the impersonalists is condemned herewith by Brahmā. All the plenary expansions of the personality of Godhead are equally potent, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 5.46. Departure eva hi dashantanamabhyupetya dipayate vrivrita hetu samana dharma yastadrageva hi cha vishnu chaya vibhati govindamadi puruṣam tamaham bhajami. The Lord expands himself as the flames of a fire expand one after another. Although the original flame, or Sri Krishna, is accepted as Govinda, the Supreme Person, all other expansions such as Rama, Nrsimha, and Varaha are as potent as the original Lord. All such expanded forms are transcendental. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is made clear that the Supreme Truth is eternally uncontaminated by material touch. There is no jugglery of words and activities in the transcendental kingdom of the Lord. All the Lord's forms are transcendental, and such manifestations are ever identical. The particular form of the Lord exhibited to a devotee is not mundane, even though the devotee may retain material desire, nor is it manifest under the influence of material energy, as is foolishly considered by the impersonalists. Impersonalists who consider the transcendental forms of the Lord to be products of the material world are surely destined for hell. 5. O my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service. For them you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. For the pure devotee of the Lord, there is nothing beyond the lotus feet of the Lord. And the Lord knows that such devotees do not wish anything more than that. The word "tu" specifically establishes this fact. The Lord also does not wish to be separated from the lotus hearts of those pure devotees. That is the transcendental relationship between the pure devotees and the personality of Godhead. Because the Lord does not wish to separate himself from the hearts of such pure devotees, it is understood that they are specifically dearer than the impersonalists. The relationship of the pure devotees with the Lord develops because of devotional service to the Lord on the authentic basis of Vedic authority. Such pure devotees are not mundane sentimentalists, but are factually realists because their activities are supported by the Vedic authorities who have given oral reception to the facts mentioned in the Vedic literatures. The word paraya is very significant. Parabhakti, or spontaneous love of God, is the basis of an intimate relationship with the Lord. This highest stage of relationship with the Lord can be attained simply by hearing about him, his name, form, quality, etc., from authoritative sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, recited by pure, unalloyed devotees of the Lord. 6. O my Lord, the people of the world are embarrassed by all material anxieties. They are always afraid. They always try to protect wealth, body, and friends. They are filled with lamentation and unlawful desires and paraphernalia. And they avariciously base their undertakings on the perishable conceptions of my and mine. As long as they do not take shelter at your safe lotus feet, they are full of such anxieties. Purport. Do you want to hear the purport?
Yes.
One may question how one can always think of the Lord in regard to his name, fame, quality, etc., if one is embarrassed by thoughts of family affairs. Everyone in the material world is full of thoughts about how to maintain his family, how to protect his wealth, how to keep pace with friends and relatives, etc. Thus he is always in fear and lamentation, trying to keep up with the status quo. In answer to this question, This verse spoken by Brahmā is very appropriate. A pure devotee of the Lord never thinks of himself as the proprietor of his home. He surrenders everything unto the supreme control of the Lord, and thus he has no fear for maintaining his family or protecting the interests of his family. Because of this surrender, he no longer has any attraction for wealth. Even if there is attraction for wealth, it is not for sense enjoyment, but for the service of the Lord. A pure devotee may be attracted to accumulating wealth, just like an ordinary man, but the difference is that a devotee acquires money for the service of the Lord, whereas the ordinary man acquires money for his own sense enjoyment. Thus, the acquisition of wealth by a devotee is not a source of anxieties, as is the case for a worldly man. And because a pure devotee accepts everything to be the sense, and because a pure devotee accepts everything in the sense of serving the Lord, the poisonous teeth of accumulation of wealth are extracted. If a snake has its poison removed and bites a man, there is no fatal effect. Similarly, wealth accumulated in the cause of the Lord has no poisonous teeth, and the effect is not fatal. A pure devotee is never entangled in material worldly affairs, even though he may remain in the world like an ordinary man. Text 7. O my Lord, persons who are bereft of the all-auspicious performance of chanting and hearing about your transcendental activities are certainly unfortunate and are also bereft of good sense. They engage in inauspicious activities, enjoying sense gratification for a very little while. The next question is why people are against such auspicious activities as chanting and hearing the glories and pastimes of the Lord, which can bring total freedom from the cares and anxieties of material existence. The only answer to this question is that they are unfortunate because of supernatural control due to their offensive activities performed simply for the sake of sense gratification. The Lord's pure devotees, however, take compassion upon such unfortunate persons and in a missionary spirit try to persuade them into the line of devotional service. Only by the grace of pure devotees can such unfortunate men be elevated to the position of transcendental service. 8. O great actor, my Lord, all these poor creatures are constantly perplexed by hunger, thirst, severe cold, secretion, and bile, attacked by coughing winter, blasting summer, rains, and many other disturbing elements, and overwhelmed by strong sex urges and indefatigable anger. I take pity on them, and I am very much aggrieved for them. Purport: a pure devotee of the Lord, like Brahmā, and persons in his disciplic succession, are always unhappy to see the perplexities of the conditioned souls who are suffering the onslaughts of the threefold miseries which pertain to the body and mind, to the disturbances of material nature, and to many other such material disadvantages. Not knowing adequate measures for relieving such difficulties, suffering persons sometimes pose themselves as leaders of the people, and the unfortunate followers are put into further disadvantages under such so-called leadership. This is like a blind man's leading another blind man to fall into a ditch. Therefore, unless the devotees of the Lord take pity on them and teach them the right path, their lives are hopeless failures. The devotees of the Lord who voluntarily take the responsibility of raising the foolish, materialistic sense enjoyers are as confidential to the Lord as Lord Brahmā. There you have it. 9. O my Lord, the material miseries are without factual existence for the soul. Yet as long as the conditioned soul sees the body as meant for sense enjoyment, he cannot get out of the entanglement of material miseries, being influenced by your external energy. The whole trouble of the living entity in material existence is that he has an independent conception of life. He is always dependent on the rules of the Supreme Lord in both the conditioned and liberated states, but by the influence of the external energy, the conditioned soul thinks himself independent of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead. His constitutional position is to dovetail himself with the desire of the Supreme Will, but as long as he does not do so, he is sure to drag on in the shackles of material bondage. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 255, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partamanogatam. He has to give up all sorts of plans manufactured by mental concoction. The living entity has to dovetail himself with the Supreme Will. That will help him to get out of the entanglement of material existence. And now we'll take some reflections and questions.
Hare Krishna. In 3.8.9, as mentioned, Puruṣa heard the Srimad Bhagavatam and then spoke it to Puruṣa, who then spoke it to Maitreya, who then spoke it to Vidura. Is there any mention of where or when this happened?
Our pundits are looking it up right now. We'll get back to you. Anyone else? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Vaisesika Prabhu. I have a question on.
Someone speaking? The outside
I have
party.
a question on verse 3:7:26. It says there that it declared emphatically that the pure devotees of the Lord know everything spiritual and material. And in a previous verse, it was mentioned that Maitreya Muni, he expressed his surprise even though he knew it. So in that case, it was a pastime. But how do we understand it for pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada? Because things happened in the movement, and then someone may question that why did it happen? Because a pure devotee knows everything that's happening spiritually and materially. It's 3:7:26.
What's that? 3:7:26. That's what I thought. O son of Mitra, kindly describe how the planets are situated above the earth as well as underneath it. Is this the verse? And also please mention their measurement. Yasmin vignate sarvam evam vignatum bhavati. The Vedic hymn declares emphatically that the devotee of the Lord knows everything material and spiritual in relationship to the Lord. Devotees are not simply emotional, as is ill-conceived by certain less intelligent men. Their direction is practical. They know everything that is and all the details of the Lord's domination over the different creations. So I think your question was, since that's true, how is it that there are anomalies in the Krishna consciousness movement, or there were, and still are, under the watchful eye of a pure devotee, namely Srila Prabhupada? Was that your question?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So, first of all, Prabhupada dispelled this conception of pure devotee or the guru or the spiritual master as being omnipotent like Krishna. That's a misunderstanding. What? Omniscient, like Krishna. And in a conversation, for example, on a morning walk, one of Prabhupada's disciples had asked Prabhupada, how is it that the spiritual master is considered to be perfect? He said, for instance, a disciple may notice that the spiritual master wears glasses. And he said, the disciple may also notice that the spiritual master forgets a verse. So then Prabhupada said, then they've not understood what perfection means. He said, perfection means is fully engaged in spreading the Sankirtan movement. He left it at that. And the idea that there will be no anomalies is something Prabhupada addressed when devotees during his time had complained about anomalies. For instance, Atreya Rishi Prabhu, who was a GBC, governing body commissioner, and a successful person in his own right, had complained to Prabhupada that the leaders were fighting amongst themselves. I'm matching that with Prabhupada's answer. We don't have Atreya Rishi's letter, but that's what Prabhupada answers. The question he's answering. And Prabhupada wrote back to him, and he said, your expectation that there will be no friction is mayavad. And then he said that because all living entities are individuals, there's always going to be a difference of opinion. And then he said that don't expect or look for utopia. And then he said, even in the spiritual world, don't expect utopia. He said sometimes you'll find that Krishna accidentally milks a bull instead of a cow because he's enamored of Srimati Radharani's beauty, or he said sometimes the gopis don't dress properly because they are in a hurry to go see Krishna. The gist of what he was saying was that there are always going to be some anomalies. And so one could make the same point. If Krishna's overseeing everything, he's there within the heart, why are there any anomalies? In fact, it did come up earlier. It was in the earlier sections. The question was asked by Vidura, how is it that there are difficulties for the living entity since Krishna's there personally present? Remember that? Yes. So you could say, well, Krishna is omniscient and he's omnipotent, and yet there are still anomalies because of the individual nature. The living entity has free will, can act this way or that. Spiritual master's not, at least, Krishna sometimes assumes the role of a spiritual master, but in general, spiritual masters representing Krishna aren't expected to be omniscient. But even if they were, if Krishna can't If under Krishna's watch there are anomalies, why wouldn't there be under somebody else's? Other questions? 1, 2, 3. Madhava's got somebody online, so give it to him first. Okay, go ahead.
In the previous chapter, in text 22, it says, at the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and later in the purport, it says, the age of Brahma is calculated in terms of Divya years, which is distinct from the solar years of human beings. The Divya years are calculated in Bhagavad Gita 8:17. Brahma's 1 day is equal to 1,000 times the aggregate of the 4 yugas, calculated to be
4,300,000
years. On that basis, Brahma meditated for 100 years. But doesn't Brahma live for only 100 years? But it says, according to that calculation, he meditated for 100 years. So wouldn't that be the end of his life?
Yeah. It doesn't mention. It did seem a little abrupt to me too. We'll look into it. Mahendra.
In the purport to the 4th verse of this chapter, Prabhupada says the particular form of the Lord exhibited to a devotee is not mundane, even though the devotee may retain material desire. Can you say something about that?
Can you?
Even though the devotee can retain material desire, the form of the Lord exhibits to the devotee is not mundane. To what that refers to? I just find it how the devotee can have material desires and the Lord exhibits a form to that devotee.
Well, it's more the norm than it is an exception. Most devotees have some material desire, but the Lord doesn't totally withdraw himself. That's why Shukadeva Goswami says, Akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama utaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta param. The Lord can accommodate any kind of devotee, whatever condition one's in, because even if one has some material desire, that it gets purified when he approaches Krishna. That was that class about Putana. Who gave that class? That was Tara, yeah. There was a lot of the whole Bhakti-yam Stanakala Putam verse, and Krishna's just because somebody has some material desire doesn't mean Krishna. If like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in one of his purports in the Brahmā Samhita, says that if it's mixed devotional service, it means there's some pure devotional service in it. Because otherwise, what's it mixed with? And since Krishna will accept the least qualification of a living entity and give him the highest reward, he's always there available to take that from anybody. Aho bhakiyam stanakala kutam chikam saya payadapyasadvi. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Pardon?
With reference to his question.
Okay, we got an answer for your question. And did we find out anything from the outside People's Party? Question that Gopal made earlier. Did you research that too?
Yeah. We looked into what Gopal Prabhu asked, and we couldn't find anything.
Okay. Madhava, question, 100 years.
As far as 100 years goes, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, puruṣa yusha means by 100 years. This should be understood to be time according to the calculations of human life in Kali Yuga when Maitreya was speaking. So it's our 100 years.
Good question, you caught that.
36,000 days.
Does that help? Is it me or is it?
This mic is very sensitive.
Then why don't I can use the other one sometimes too. I just needed a break because I was getting a hole in my head. Prabhu. Thanks, Hamipras. Gold star for the research department.
I looked up further on that verse from 3:7:26.
Yeah.
That was so. Srila Prabhupada quotes that again later in the 4th canto. In the 4th canto, chapter 9, text 14, when Dhruva Maharaj was offering prayers, and he says, "Knowledge received through the transcendental causeless mercy of the Lord is so perfect that by that knowledge the devotee becomes acquainted with all the different manifestations of the Lord." And it seems to be more so focused on those things in relation to the Lord and those things coming through revelation, like of matter and spirit. Like I think it brings to mind the example of
one reporter asked Srila Prabhupada, does a pure devotee know everything? And he said, like, how many windows are in the Empire State Building? And Srila Prabhupada said, how many drops of water in the mirage? So I think it's similar in that way. They know of essential knowledge.
Yes. Prabhupada also said the pure devotee knows what Krishna wants him to know. Again, he's not omniscient, but he has buddhi yoga. Krishna's informing him of what's important. The living entity never becomes Krishna or has the same perspective, because living entities always, the living entity in Krishna is always Krishna, but a pure devotee has a way of, or Krishna has a way of communicating with those who are pure-hearted. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. And sometimes, as we were quoting earlier, the verse Am vedmi shuko veti vyasa veti naveti va, this enigmatic verse describes the ways in which sometimes, like the verse says, Shiva's saying, I know, Aham vedmi shuko veti, Shukadev knows, Vyasa veti naveti va. Vyas may know or not know. So I said, what are you talking about? And there's a way that verse is often, that section of the verse is often described, that someone may be representing Krishna, and what's coming through that person, they may not even understand. They're delivering a certain kind of knowledge, but it's not like they necessarily have, they obviously don't have omniscience, and they may not have a complete understanding of how it's coming through them, because they're agreeing to be used as instruments in Krishna's service.
Hare Krishna. Whoa. I thought this verse 3.9.5 was very amazing, because when the Kumaras go to Vaikuṇṭha, they smell the tulsi that's on the feet of Lord Vishnu, and it enters into it's said there that it enters into their nostrils, and it enacts a transformation of heart. But here it's saying that smell of the aroma of the lotus feet enters through the ears. So it seems like devotees who are smelling the aroma of the Lord's lotus feet with their ears have a little bit of that power that the Lord has, that he can perform the functions of any of his senses with any of his other senses.
Yeah. Similar description by Prithu Maharaj about the ways in which when a pure devotee speaks, then the sound vibration touches Krishna's lotus feet, where there's saffron particles. And then Prithu says, then the sound vibration from that pure devotee is mixed with saffron mercy particles. And therefore it has a different effect. It's poetical. The fact is, sound carries consciousness. And a Vaishnava makun girnam putam harikatam shravana navikartavyam sarpochista yatapaya. It's a verse from the Padma Purana. Anyway, it's quoted by Sanatana Goswami. But it says that if somebody's not a Vaishnava and they speak, shouldn't listen. Because, especially it's used in context with people who are speaking Krishna Katha, but they're not devotees. And therefore it says that vibration is different. He compares it to milk, which is normally desirable and nutritious, being touched by the lips of a serpent, and then it becomes contaminated. So it's uncanny. We heard earlier as well about how the ear and sound, it was about sound, and how that's the most important sense. I've noticed that Remember the days of conference calls before Zoom? You just be on a phone with 10 people, and somebody wants to say something, and all they make half a syllable because they're about to speak, and I know who it is. I just hear the sound, and oh yeah, go ahead, Dilip. You know, I know that's you. We can gather information from afar, and there's also a way in which the quality of the consciousness of the person who's speaking is represented by the sound vibration itself. That's the main point. If you hear from somebody whose heart is pure, it has a completely different effect. And we get purified by that sound vibration.
The last sentence here of this translation, for them, for the devotees, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. It's very sweet. It reminds me of the verse, I think it's 285. Yeah, that one. So there's a lotus there in the hearts of the devotees that Krishna enters, carried on sound into the ears, and he sits down on the lotus flower of our loving relationship with him.
And Prabhupada writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the section of the Gudicha Marjana about cleansing the heart of any anarthas. And he said when one's successful in doing that, then he can install Krishna on the throne of his heart. And then he said he can hold a festival and invite everybody to come. And you can have everyone come once you just installed Krishna. Where? Right here, and come in, we'll feed everybody. Okay. It is from Padma Purana. Okay, well, a broken clock is right at least twice a day, huh? 4.20.25. Padma Purana.
I just wanted to represent this. I liked this last sentence we read of the purport, the last purport. Therefore, unless the devotees of the Lord take pity on them and teach them, speaking about the blind men and the materialists, take pity on them and teach them the right path, their lives are hopeless failures. The devotees of the Lord who voluntarily take the responsibility of raising the foolish materialistic sense enjoyers are as confidential to the Lord as Lord Brahmā. That was inspiring, especially moving into Prabhupada's marathon coming up in December. I think that's
And this goes back to your point about ways in which people sometimes distinguish themselves by having an apparent predisposition towards Radharani or somebody else. Whereas Prabhupada's mood was, and Krishna's mood, as we hear from this, was more that when devotees are out saving conditioned souls, doing the field work, that's when they become most intimate with the Lord. In fact, in the Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada talks about ways in which one becomes Krishna's friend. And one of the ways is by preaching. If somebody is going preaching on your behalf, you probably have a little appreciation for them. So Krishna's like that. Okay, a lot going on here. If anybody from the outside has a question, you have to speak up. Got to hold that really close.
In the second canto, and then the beginning of the second or third chapter, in one of the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, he's quoting from the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna's hands, legs are everywhere in the universe, and then Prabhupada is saying that we are Krishna's legs, hands, and so we're supposed to act according to his desire.
Nice point. And there was another hand. Who else? Devrata came in. That means something's happened. He's got some. From mosquitoes.
Guru Maharaj, I really like the verse 397. The purport Srila Prabhupada says that that why wouldn't someone take the auspicious activities of chanting and hearing if it frees one from all anxieties? And he says because they are unfortunate because of supernatural control due to their offensive activities performed simply for the sake of sense gratification. And only by the grace of pure devotees can such unfortunate men be elevated to the position of transcendental service. It really applies for me because as much as I want to sometimes I think I want to read whole day, but I get distracted because of my offensive activities of for the sake of sense gratification, as it says here. And I'm really thankful to you that by your grace, unfortunate men like me can be elevated to the position of transcendental service. So, and these readings, I can't imagine I can read or hear for 5 hours, but because of the ecstasy of your readings, and I feel I'm also catching hold of it and riding on those waves. So thank you so much.
Actually, it more relates to you in that you're always out there saving people who have material desires. Krishna Saka brings home more people than anybody else I know. Every time we have one of our Bhakti community Zoom calls, he and his wife, who have been out there, they go everywhere on traveling Sankirtan. Every stop they make, 3, 5 people they bring in to, but that's really the spirit of it, going out and just intervening into people's lives. A lot of people have material desires, but they're kind of innocent. They don't know any better. And when you meet them and make friends and give them an opportunity to associate with devotees, it's the greatest kindness that you can show anybody. Plus, as you were pointing out, it's the best service too. And what Prabhupada said is in the mood of the gopis. You know that, right? I put it in my book because as a historical fact, circa 1974, Rameshwar Prabhu, who was the head of the BBT, was preaching about how the gopis are going everywhere and they try to bring people closer to Krishna. He said Lord Chaitanya's movement is like that, and therefore he was saying that the book distribution is in the mood of the gopis. So one devotee had written a letter. We actually had the letter. I put it in my book asking Prabhupada if this was correct. And Prabhupada replied, yes, this is correct. So I'm just saying the practical devotional service of going door to door, as Prahlad Maharaj says, prayena deva muniya svabhimukti kama kama. That I don't want to go away into the forest and do meditation and so forth. I want to be out there where I'm with the conditioned souls, giving them an opportunity. It's the best kind of service. Yes.
This is from Gaurangara Dutipada. This is the 4th text. Gaur prema rasanarve se tarange jebadube se radha madhav antaranga grihe bhanete take hagoranga bole dake narotama mage tarasanga. If one says, quote, let me dive deep into the waves of the nectarian ocean of the transcendental loving movement introduced by Lord Chaitanya, he immediately becomes one of the confidential devotees of Radha and Krishna. It does not matter whether one is a householder living at home or a vanaprastha or a sannyasi living in the forest. If he chants, O Gauranga, and becomes a devotee of Lord Chaitanya, then Narottam Das begs to have his association.
And elsewhere, when Prabhupada quotes that section from Narottam Das in a purport, he points out that those who are engaged in the Sankirtan, modern day Sankirtan movement, are to be known as Nityasiddhas. He said it it's not that just the associates of the Lord who came with him at the time were Nityasiddhas. He said, but those who are engaged in the Sankirtan movement, even in modern times now, are also to be considered Nityasiddhas because of the benediction of Lord Chaitanya and propagating the Sankirtan movement. Yes.
Hare Krishna. There's that verse Yata Yata Gora Parada Vinde Vindeta Bhaktim Krita Punya Rasi Tato Tato Sarpadi Ritta Kakshma Harapadam Bolju Sadam Varasi, that to the degree one surrenders to the service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that degree an inspiration for the service of the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani will arise. But simultaneously we were speaking about not finding a niche and blowing it up. So it seems like in the course of serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, the natural byproduct is there's going to be some inspiration within the heart. But simultaneously, it seems like that internal inspiration is meant to be a very confidential thing. I'd be interested to hear you elaborate on this principle.
Speaking of confidentiality, a very striking point made in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita is that when one has such revelations, one shouldn't reveal it even to one's own mind, lest it be profaned by the false ego and taken as something to aggrandize oneself. Anything else? Outside People's Party? Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, 18 Thakur Gauriyaki Kariyachin Atmasat, 18 and Charan Vandam Tine Moranat. If you so desire, please instill in us a sense of compassion for ourselves and our own my own fallen condition, and for all conditioned souls, and empower us to spread the Sankirtan movement. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. You're hired. Vanchakalpadurvascha kripasindabevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Compliments to the Govardhana a cappella choir.